Today on the show, we're featuring two conversations with Quebec Liberal candidates running in the Eastern Townships. First, I speak with North Hatley resident and Quebec Liberal leader Charles Milliard, who is currently running in the Orford riding. We talk about his connection to the region, his time teaching at Bishop's University, and his message to English-speaking residents, along with some of the bigger issues shaping the campaign, including healthcare, agriculture, language relations, and recent government policies. Then we hear from Knowlton resident Frédéric Beauchemin, the Quebec Liberal candidate in Brome-Missisquoi. In this interview, he shares his personal ties to the townships, his vision for regional economic development, and where he stands on key issues affecting both anglophone and francophone communities. I'm William Crooks, and this is the Pulse of the Eastern Townships broadcast. Today on the show, I'm speaking with North Hatley resident and Quebec Liberal leader Charles Milliard, who is currently running in the Orford riding. We talk about his connection to the Eastern Townships, his time teaching at Bishop's University, and his message to English-speaking residents in the region. We also get into some of the bigger issues shaping the campaign, including healthcare, agriculture, language relations, and his stance on recent government policies.
I think people might know this already, but you live in North Hatley.
Yes, so I've been living in North Hatley for the past 2 years now. So this is a region that I've been visiting for many years, but we decided 2 years ago to settle here permanently. So I'm not here just on weekends, but all week long. And we have this 19th century cottage that is just beautiful in this beautiful village.
And tell me just briefly a little bit about your working in collaboration with Bishop's University.
Well, when I lost to Mr. Rodriguez last June, I actually got in contact with the chancellor, and they had an opening for a few classes to teach at the Williams School of Business, and so they offered me to be executive in residence. So I was both, like teaching, but also doing some PR for the university. So I taught 3 classes in entrepreneurship, product strategy, innovation, marketing. And interestingly, I'm actually going there tonight for there's this recognition gala.
Okay.
Students, so I'm actually going there tonight at 5.
What kind of? I mean, Bishop's University is considered kind of the institutional hub of the English community in the Eastern Townships. What kind of insights? What have you learned about the English community while working there?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a beautiful institution. I think it's one of the unknown gem of the academic institutions in Quebec. Especially from the unknown from the French-speaking community, I would say. As you can see, I'm a francophone, so just having the privilege to teach in my second language was something very very close to my heart. And I think like Bishop's University is like all the townshippers of English-speaking origin. It just works. It's just a great example of mixity and diversity and living all together. And this is so unknown from the rest of Quebec, especially from Eastern Quebec, where I'm from. So hopefully Quebecers can get to know more about this amazing experience that is the Bishops in the townships. Speaking
of Bishops, in the past couple of years, there's been the whole tuition thing with the CAC government. What is your position on maybe some of the things the CAC government has done to loosely speaking, to harm the English university institutions in Quebec?
Well, it's quite simple and clear. Like we need to do the exact reverse. That's what the CAC did. I think we need to be proud of our 3 main university institutions of English-speaking universities. So we have promised to just undo what has been done. Bishops had the chance, I would say, to have it reversed by the Legault government.
Yes.
Especially because it came from a group of local people from the community, former Premier Charest and the Chamber of Commerce. So everybody came together with Pierre Cossette from Université de Sherbrooke. So it was like a push that was community-based, and hopefully it was reversed. But the way Concordia and McGill are treated is just shameful.
With your time at Bishop's University, of course, as you said, you are a francophone. How do you feel like the English-French relationship is particularly in the townships? Is that something you got a beat on?
Well, what I like to say is how my different classes were, composé. 60% of my students were French-speaking Quebecers that wanted to learn both business and English.
Right.
20% from the rest of Canada. And 20% from abroad. It used to be way more than 20%, but thanks to the CAC, it is now just only 20%. And what I liked about it is that, all the classes and the material were in English, but during breaks and after class, there was this mix of languages, mix of origins, mix of, different cultures. So I think it's a huge opportunity for French-speaking Quebecers to go to Bishop's and meet with the community, and especially from the students from the rest of Canada to get that, Quebec experience. And we had amazing debates about language, about, secularism, about entrepreneurship. And there's so much in common between, just as an example, entrepreneurship in Alberta and Quebec. Except from the language, it's pretty much the same challenges. So it has been very enriching for both the students and I.
You just brought up the topic of secularism. That's a big deal right now, as Bill 21 is being questioned at the Supreme Court. I already asked Mr. Beauchemin about this, but what are your views on that bill, and how would a Liberal government, if you were to get elected, deal with that?
Yeah, well, obviously this is a complex issue, but as I mentioned a couple of times, the conclusions of the Bouchard-Taylor Commission was something that was really more like what I think myself. I think the CAC went further, went probably too far, but it is what it is right now. But we live in a state of law, and every law is contestable, So we have it before the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens. I was kind of hoping we would have their conclusion before the general elections. Not sure about that now. But the promise that the PLQ took a couple of years ago, and it's still valid, is that we won't be reviewing this clause in 2029. But I'm assuming a lot will happen between now and 2029. Yeah. And on Bill 9 for the garderie, so we are opposing this bill. Because again, it's going too far, and it's just a political masquerade, if you want.
In terms of English people kind of speaking to me, a lot of them feel as though they're sensitive to the idea that French Quebecers would care about the preservation of their language, but sometimes they feel like the English population in Quebec is a little bit unfairly targeted. Do you have comment on that?
Well, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
The CAC has been dividing us for 8 years and the PQ for 50 years. So I think it's about time we have a premier and a party who wants to talk to 100% of Quebecers and not only to the majority. And most of my English-speaking friends and colleagues, they're all about protecting and promoting French. They just want their, fundamental rights, especially when it comes to healthcare and education, to be protected. And this is what we will be doing, and I will be saying the same thing in both official languages.
For the some English people feel as though the Quebec Liberal Party is really the only party they can vote for in Quebec. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they feel like they're sidelined a little bit because of the tension sometimes with the French vote. Do you have comment on that?
Well, I think Anglophones can vote for any party. I mean, you can look at the rise, and I'm being very honest, there's a little rise of interest for the Conservative Party of Quebec. I really take nothing for granted. This is why I'm actually meeting with lots of leaders from different organizations and all, walks of life from the community. So I don't take anything for granted, and I totally understand that sometimes they feel a little bit, isolated on the political field. But this is why the team that I'm actually gathering, both from actual M&A and future M&As, will be showcasing the diversity of Quebec, and that comes not only from the different regions, but the different languages and cultures and backgrounds.
Now, Mr. Beauchemin spoke about this a little bit, but what are one or two of the big challenges that you think English townshippers face specifically?
Well, access to healthcare is an issue, but it's an issue in any languages. This is something that I've been talked about a lot. And actually, this morning I met with the foundation of Hôpital Memphremagog, and so they're helping a lot of English-speaking communities get access to whether it's nurses, doctors, or just medical support, home care services as well. So I think it's a big issue. The other big issue, I would say, is agriculture. There's a lot of problems with our farmers right now, especially when it comes to the, how do we say, la relève agricole. So how people can, sell their farms to either their sons or daughters or other people. So I hear a lot about that. I was in Bon Secours this morning, so up north in the Orford riding. So those are very, kitchen table issues. And hopefully this campaign will be about bread and butter issues and not about only identity issues and separation, which 71% of Quebecers don't want to hear about.
Is there like a main takeaway, like a main message you want my English townshipper readers to hear?
Well, historically, the party has been popular in the region minus the last 8 years. So I'm actually gathering a team that will hopefully regain the trust and confidence of townshippers from both English and French sides. And we're going to have a strong townships and S3 region back in government with the Liberal Party, hopefully.
That was Quebec Liberal leader Charles Milliard speaking about his campaign in Orford and his vision for the Eastern Townships. As always, thanks for listening, and be sure to follow along for more local interviews and coverage. I'm William Crooks, and this is the Pulse of the Eastern Townships broadcast. Today on the show, we're speaking with Knowlton resident Frédéric Beauchemin, the Quebec Liberal candidate in Brome-Missisquoi. In this exclusive interview, he shares his personal connection to the Eastern Townships, his vision for regional economic development, and where he stands on key issues affecting both anglophone and francophone communities.
So give me a little bit about your background in Brome-Missisquoi.
Sure. So I'll go from back into the Middle Ages, if you don't mind. My folks used to put me on a bus when I was a kid, talking when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And weekends in the winter, there were these buses that would roam around the South Shore of Montreal, pick up kids and take them to skiing stations. So it would have been early 70s. And so we, I guess myself, but my sister had followed after. I had 3 sisters at the time. We skied in the Eastern Township all of our youth. And so my first connectivity with the Eastern Townships was at Orford, because the first year the bus was only going to Orford, which was an amazing mountain, still is an amazing mountain, and I love skiing there. But then the next year, the bus, they decided that they were going to be alternating, and then it eventually became like, there were certain buses going to certain ski stations, and others were basically alternating between stations. So at the end of the day, after a few years, I had skied as a very young kid. I had skied OZ, Glen, Sutton, Orford, and Bromont.
Sure, yeah.
So that's how I started my connectivity with the Eastern Townships. Well, my dad had a shop in Marieville, in Montérégie, exit 37 on the Eastern Township, and it was producing ceramic tiles and roofing tile and roofing materials and so forth, decorative bricks and so forth. And so as a kid, I used to, go and spend time with my dad in the summer. And then because it was construction industry, every time the last 2 weeks of July came around, our entire family left on holidays. And so when we left on holidays, we initially went to well, we were basically going to North Truro in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and, you know, basically driving through the Eastern Township to get to, you know, basically New Hampshire or Vermont, very close to where the Vermont-New Hampshire border meets at the Canadian border, and then eventually all the way down to Massachusetts. So long story short, my exposure to anywhere outside of what looked like suburbia in being the South Shore of Montreal, therefore to the countryside, was with the Eastern Township. So I've always had this love for the region. I've always had this love for the mountains of the region, the roads and you know, the prairies and the farming fields and so forth. And so, you know, as a university kid, a bunch of friends of mine and I decided to rent a place on Petit Lac Magog for a few years. So that was fun. And then, you know, I worked in capital markets, so I left Quebec at the time and went and worked in Toronto for many years. And then when I came back, I met this girl, and we decided to forge a family, and so we had a couple kids. But before we did have kids, I had a place up north of Tremblant, and you know what? I liked it, but I couldn't connect. Like the nature, the way it is, like the just the entire sort of, you know, small hills, no real prairies type of approach to the Laurentian. It's cute, it's nice, but it wasn't for me. Like my calling was to, you know, go back to the Eastern Townships. So back after a few years just living in Montreal and having no place up north, I said to my ex at the time that I'm going to go and look out for a place in the Eastern Townships. So I drove around for a few years, and in 2004 I landed in Knowlton. I landed on Brome Lake, and so that ended up being initially the cottage for the family from 2004 to 2018, and then in 2019 I decided to move here full time. Moved to Knowlton full time, and so I've been full time, you know, resident of Brome-Missisquoi ever since.
What do you think? The Townships has a very strong English element to its heritage, which we cover a lot in the Pulse.
Absolutely.
What do you think about? I guess this is just a preliminary question. What do you think about the I guess English heritage and the English the partial English character of the Townships?
Well, the heritage is strong, and the heritage is still very much alive, I have to say. You know, when you drive around, you see the history that's basically represented in many ways in the architecture and in the way some gardens are built, in the way that basically tree pines are in front of front yards everywhere. And so there's a lot of history. I think it's an interesting part of Quebec's culture, obviously, I have to say. And, you know, it's obviously a significant heritage for Brome-Missisquoi. I think the Eastern Township is very much different from the rest of Quebec just because of that. But also, as I was before explaining, it's the geographical, you know, I guess, geographical luck of just being what it is makes it very unique. So I actually have friends and people that I've met throughout the years in both English and French community living there full time. But as you can imagine, sort of like living on Brome Lake, it's more of a weekenders type of place. You know, there's people that just go there for the weekends. But throughout the years, I've met a lot of small and medium-sized businesses owned both by anglophones and francophones. And I've had the pleasure to meet a lot of people that live there, that golf there, that live their life in the Eastern Township.
Okay, great. Now, I mean, we talked about the past English heritage. What do you think some of the particular challenges the English community faces? What do you think some of them are in the townships today?
I think it's actually, it's difficult for many English-speaking Quebecers living in the Eastern Township to actually have, all of the sort of proximity, and I don't mean the services per se, but it's actually having the proximity to services, not the actual services, because the services are there, but, actually the proximity to services sometimes is a bit of an issue, whether it's English coverage in the medical system or whether it's, schools in English, that is a bit of an issue, but, I think that the atmosphere in the Eastern Township is that, there's a higher respect for both the English community by the francophone community and francophone community by the English community. And so the actual vivre ensemble is amazing in Eastern Township, and I think it's one of the things that opened my mind to what it is to be Canadian, what it is to be a member of society, and what it is to be a citizen of the world, basically. So I think it's a plus for everyone, whether you're an anglophone speaking French or whether you're a francophone speaking English. I think it's been illustrated many times that having more skill set is a plus, and so I think that's something that I've actually taught my kids, and this is something that I'm very proud of.
Now, you talked a little bit about how beautiful Brome-Missisquoi is and all the great ski mountains. That brings me to my next subject, which would be tourism. Yeah. And as you know, now this may be kind of a federal level question. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of the tourism, of course, in the townships depends on English Americans.
Yeah, it's actually there is a huge amount of Americans that cross the border. Whether it's Hillary Clinton that comes and visits Louise Penny in Knowlton, or vice versa, Canadians that actually cross the border and go south. But I have to say, tourism in Quebec, in the Eastern Township specifically, has been kind of sort of on the decline. But I think it's a plethora of reasons. It's just, I don't think it's just Donald Trump,
right?
And the border issues. I think it has to do as well with inflation. I think it has to do with cost of living expenses. I think the allocation per family for that spent is not as big as it was proportionately as it was before. And so there is a bit of that as well that is creating the problem. I think that, I don't see as many U.S. plates in the Eastern Township as I used to do, but
okay,
it's something that maybe is temporary. We need to realize that tourism is, I believe, the fourth biggest industry in Quebec. And so it's a very significant part of our GDP. And so I think, we have to work on making the infrastructures attractive for tourism. And that comes with, obviously, upper roads, and comes with, having, parks and developments and trails and water access and so forth, so that tourism are feeling welcome and actually are willing to come here. I think it's a combination of all of that. But there's a lot of competition as well for that kind of money in terms of the spend that both the Americans are spending here in Canada, but that also they're spending in Europe. And when you look at the currency, which is probably some of the driver, like from a U.S. perspective, traveling to Europe, notwithstanding the latest fuel increases, traveling to Europe and hotels in Europe relative to U.S. dollars versus traveling to Canada. I think that sometimes the decision becomes, perhaps more instantly because of the devaluation of the euro versus the U.S. dollar. And so, that is significant. The euro was more expensive than it was before, to be more expensive than it is now. And so maybe the decision-making process, I haven't made a survey. I haven't spent time talking to people wanting to spend money on trips in the U.S., but I think that's also part of the mix. The global offering is interesting. So we need to compete. And if I could, this drives me to actually my economic background. The issue with the present government, besides being terrible at destroying the reputation of amazing schools such as McGill and
right.
Concordia and Bishop, besides being terrible at managing the economy, he doesn't understand how the economy works. I mean, that statistic that I just told you about, tourism being the fourth biggest provider of revenue, it's not a state secret, but the CAC doesn't understand that. And, when you look at the way our economy is actually built, 97.5% of all private businesses in Quebec are small and medium-sized businesses, including all of these small bed and breakfasts, all of these small restaurants in villages everywhere. Obviously in Brome-Missisquoi and everywhere else. All of these vineyards that we have, all of these farm-to-table restaurants that we have, in whether it's in Stented, Barnum, or what have you. All of this attraction are managed by people. All of these small businesses, like your business. Like that's 97.5% of all private businesses in Quebec. They employ 80% of the private labor.
Wow, yeah.
There's a total of 270,000 of them in all of Quebec, right? And when the government actually taxes all of these businesses to the tune of about $16 billion a year, and takes that $16 billion and gives it away in subsidies to foreign companies because they want to attract them to work here in Quebec and do nothing for small and medium-sized businesses, it's hurting the heart of our economy. It's hurting where, the potential for the next Bombardier or for the next CGI or for the next Coutal to rise from the bottom, hurting the spiritual, entrepreneurial spirit that Quebec has. And so in tourism, when you have, global competition for these tourists, and the CAC is creating this business environment where the regulation is complicated, taxes are high, it leaves the margins to be very, very slow. So the involvement of the CAC government in the day-to-day of businesses makes it such that people manage businesses don't have time to actually execute on their business plan. That's the issue. That's the main issue. If you want to drive growth in the Eastern Townships, if you want to drive growth in Brome-Missisquoi, what you need is the government to get out of the way. It's not that complicated.
Right.
The government to stop adding regulation after regulation. It's going to help the business environment. It's going to help both the francophone and the anglophone speaking community in the Eastern Township thrive. Because at the end of the day, what we want is, more salaries, more money in our pocket, as opposed to creating a new currency like the DQ is focused on by separating Quebec from the rest of Canada. What I'm going to focus on, what the Liberal Party of Quebec is going to focus on, is having more currency in your pocket. That's the main objective, so that people have then the ability to decide whether or not they want to invest more in their hotel, their restaurants, their businesses, whether they want to put money for saving. That's what we need to do. We need to create the winning environment for all business. Not pick winners. That's not the role of the government. The role of the government is to create the winning conditions for all to succeed, not to pick winners. the government's been terrible at picking winners. Let's not
Right.
say that.
What is a big issue that matters to English townshippers is Bill 21, which is before the Canadian Supreme Court. I believe arguments are being made still now. They have over the past couple of days, anyways. What is your position on that relative to the English minority of Quebec, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. I think that the issue remains into the bill structure in itself, which basically is taking away rights, right to contest. And so I'm glad to see that, at least democracy is in effect and we are able to have this conversation with the judicial system so that we can actually have a legal opinion as to the validity of the bill. And, if there are modifications that need to be made, they will be made. They will be made by a Liberal Quebec government for sure.
Right.
And the biggest issue with the Bill 21 is the notwithstanding clause. So you're limiting people's rights, not the way, that's not the way I was raised. So we need to figure this out, and I think the process is going to work fine.
Fantastic. Okay. Is there anything my questions missed? A big takeaway, something you want English townshippers to know?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that, the most important aspect of my decision to go and represent Brome-Missisquoi is obviously because I live there. It's something that I've decided to do. Going back to 2022 when Dominique Anglade wanted me to step into the seat left empty by the departure of Hélène David, I said yes to that. Obviously, when a leader is asking me to slip in, I decided to do so. But now I'm coming back home. And I'm coming back home, and I want this to be a message for all, whether it's the francophone community, the English-speaking community, our political opponents, and everyone. The Liberal Party of Quebec is back. We will be taking the Eastern Township. We will take L'Estrie back, okay? And we will have red everywhere in the Eastern Township. And be sure of that, because at the end of the day, there's only one party that's actually, history has demonstrated that it wants to govern for all Quebecers. It's always been the Liberal Party of Quebec, and that's what we intend to do. And at the same time, we want to modernize the way we view at the economy so that our economy is going to be roaring, so that people can actually have the services that they've been expected from the government. And then unfortunately, for the last 8 years, that government has been failing to do so.
That was Frédéric Beauchemin, Quebec Liberal candidate in Brome-Missisquoi. You can read the full interview at pulsetownships.com. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more local coverage from across the Eastern Townships. That was Quebec Liberal leader Charles Milliard, followed by Frédéric Beauchemin, Quebec Liberal candidate in Brome-Missisquoi, speaking about their campaigns and their vision for the Eastern Townships. You can find more coverage and the full interviews at pulsetownships.com. Always remember, keep that finger on the pulse.
The pulse, do 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 do. The pulse, do 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 do. Townships interviews. Don't forget breaking news. The pulse, the pulse, the pulse. Broadcast just for you. Are you heading out for a cruise, or lying there for a snooze? The pulse, the pulse, the pulse. Broadcast just for you. That guy, hey, I know that gal too. The pulse, the pulse, the pulse, broadcast just for you. The townships are the muse, make sure to choose the pulse, 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 the pulse of the Eastern Townships, broadcast just for you.